Breaker 19, this here's a rubber duck. You got a copy on me, Pigpen? Come on. Yeah, 10-4, Pigpen.
Looked over, and it was these two bright white lights. Just literally, they can't tell you the distance. I didn't know how big they were, but they were, I can't tell you how far apart they were. They could have been stars, thousands of miles apart. Couldn't tell, but they were just two exactly perfect white lights in the sky. And I've driven this route plenty of times, and I'm like, that's not normal. I don't remember those being there. And I'm just driving along, and I'm looking and looking, and I look over, and all of a sudden they start to move. Just imagine these two bright white lights, kind of like car headlights, but I mean they're way up in the sky. And they start to move, and they start going down like this, and they're headed straight down towards the ground. And at this point, I'm just in shock. They're headed straight down towards the ground like this. And I kind of knew about where the horizon was, and right above the horizon, they would go back up like this. I mean, fast. I mean, it was like this. And they'd shoot back up. What's going on, y'all? Hope everybody enjoyed your turkey day. Got to spend time with family. I thought I would do something a little bit different this time. I know everybody likes to hear a good story. I've had a couple careers in my life, and one of them was a long-haul truck driver. And I pretty much saw everything. I'm going to preface this pretty quick here just to say, I think I was about 26, had a good job working in a manufacturing plant. I was a press operator. I was working my way up. I was getting raises here and there, but man, it was brutal. It was physical work. It was hot. This is Louisiana, and during August, it was like 110 to 115 degrees with all the presses and machinery running and the heat outside, and it was brutal. Then in the wintertime, it was cold. But, you know, I got bored with it. And really just wanted to do something different. And I decided I wanted to be a truck driver. Now, my grandfather was a truck driver. And he drove for, I don't know, 30, 35 years and retired. And I always looked up to him. He made darn good money, too. I mean, he made some really good money. And so I decided, hey, I compared the wages, you know, the salaries and wages and pay by mile, and compared it to what I was making, decided, hey, I'm going to go be a truck driver, give it a shot. So I went to school. In Louisiana, you had to go to a school. In Louisiana, you had to go to a school because it's one of the few backwards freaking states that does not have their own CDL testing. Which means they didn't have somebody that they were paying that was on salary at the DMV that would test you. If you brought a truck up there, they couldn't test you. It's just stupid. I think I paid $2,000 for that school. Went to school, got my CDL, went to, you know, they would call them training, your newbie companies. They hire all the newbies. You don't make very much. Never got home. They promise you a certain few days off. 2 days a month, I think it was, if you're lucky. Long story short, there was a flatbed company in my hometown that was looking for a truck driver. Would have been perfect for me. If I needed maintenance or anything, I would be going through the terminal. I lived there, you know, I would be getting home every couple weeks. It was perfect. Anyway, so I started driving a flatbed, which was a lot of work. You got to know how to strap down loads because you've sometimes got, 60,000 pounds that can come off the side and crush a car. You know, it can be pretty stressful. I drove for a little while, and I was making decent money. Rebecca didn't have to work, so she likes to travel, so she started riding with me. And she didn't drive, but she did help with She did help with strapping the loads down. Everything I do, I give 110%. And I was the top driver. I'd only been there like a year and a half, and I was the top driver. I mean, I busted my ass. If I was getting close to a drop-off, I'd call my dispatcher. Hey, I'm going to be at this time. It's going to take me then this long to unload me, hopefully. Go ahead and start looking for another load. And long story short, they bought some new Kenworth trucks. And I got one of them, brand new. I think it had 200 miles on it. Then they put me on a dedicated route, which is even better because I drove the same route every week. And what we did, we picked up lumber in outside of Conway, Arkansas, and it was like some 2x12s, and it was for a company out in Orange, California that made scaffolding for the construction industry. And literally every week they would order a trailer full of this lumber, and it was about 1,600 miles. And we would get back, we would get to outside of Conway, Arkansas, and we would pick up our load. Be like Friday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Drive down, go through Shreveport, Louisiana, where we lived at. Sometimes we had a mobile home at the time. We also had an apartment at one time. If we were tired, we would just stay there the night, get up the next morning, start driving. This was back when trucks were governed at 65 miles an hour. So at maximum, I could drive 650 miles a day. So long story short, we would leave Arkansas about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we would be in Orange, California, 1,600 miles away, Sunday afternoon. And usually that last leg going through Arizona, California, it was a lot of desert, so I would choose to drive at night because it was easier on the truck. It wasn't as hot, traffic was better. So this one particular night, like I said, I used to drive this route every freaking week. This one particular night, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I think I had just started driving, and I'd probably been driving about 2 hours, and I think I had just left the truck stop, and if I remember right, Rebecca was in the back sleeper. She was either reading or asleep. She had the curtain drawn and everything, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's pitch black, and I'm driving along, and just outside of El Centro, California. It's nothing but desert, and then you get to El Centro. It's like a little patch of civilization. Just outside of El Centro, it's probably about 20 miles out. I'm driving along, and something out of the corner of my eye, or something out of the corner of my eye caught my eye. And I looked over, and it was these two bright white lights. Just literally, they can't tell you the distance. I didn't know how big they were, but they were, I can't tell you how far apart they were. They could have been stars, thousands of miles apart. Couldn't tell, but they were just two exactly perfect white lights in the sky. And I've driven this route plenty of times, and I'm like, that's not normal. I don't remember those being there. And I'm just driving along, and I'm looking and looking, and I look over, and all of a sudden they start to move. Just imagine these two bright white lights, kind of like car headlights, but I mean they're way up in the sky. And they start to move, and they start going down like this, and they're headed straight down towards the ground. And at this point, I'm just in shock. They're headed straight down towards the ground like this. And I kind of knew about where the horizon was, and right above the horizon, they would go back up like this. I mean fast. I mean, it was like this. And they'd shoot back up, and then they turn like this, and they kind of go this direction, and they just disappear. And I'm like thinking I'm hallucinating at this point. I'm still driving along, just watching and watching. About 30 seconds, 45 seconds pass, and they just appear again. These two white lights. And they're about like this for a few seconds, and then they straight down towards the ground again, just like this. Just before they get to the ground, they shoot straight back up. Turn that way. Then it went like this and disappeared. I'm like, oh my God, I am seeing a UFO at this point. I yelled back at Rebecca. I said, Rebecca, you got to come see this. This is crazy. I think I'm hallucinating. She pulls the curtain back and she looks out. She's like standing up, looking out the curtain. And I'm like, watch this over here. Same thing again. Two white lights just show up straight down. Now she's fascinated, so she gets up. She's sitting in the passenger seat. And we're sitting here just watching this. And this just keeps going on. Just the same pattern every time. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to be one of those people that finally saw a UFO, This must have gone on about 15 minutes. And we got closer and closer to El Centro. And it was the same area that we kept seeing these lights, but the direction of travel that we were on the interstate, we were actually getting closer to them. And like I said, it just kept repeating this pattern. Two white lights would show up, straight down towards the ground, straight back up, turn, and disappear. We kept driving and driving and driving and got closer and closer, and by this time, these things are about the size of headlights on a car. And they show up again. I mean, this is probably, at this point of travel, they're about 200 yards off the interstate now is when they show up right next to the truck. Two bright lights almost blinding us. Almost like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or Fourth Kind, or whatever you want to call it. Blinding us. Literally to the point I have spots in my eyes. And oh my God, did the same exact thing. Shot down towards the ground. By this time we were so close, the ground was being illuminated. These big circular patterns of light just, and it looked like agriculture. I don't know what they were growing, dates or something in the desert. And you could literally see this now. Just as it got to the ground, it shot back up, and guess what it was? It was a freaking crop duster. Yeah, it was a freaking crop duster. I didn't know they did crop dusting at night, but believe it or not, it wasn't a UFO. Well, it was at one time. Then we kind of figured it out. But they do crop dusting. El Centro is actually a little agricultural place in California. And they do crop dusting at night for two reasons. One, a lot of the insects come out at night. And two, the heat is not so bad, so when they spray the chemical on the plants, it has time to sit on there and it doesn't evaporate, so it saves them money. And literally, they have these crop dusters with these two spotlights, one on each wing, and these daredevils fly at night, literally come within 50 feet of the ground, spray their load, go up, turn, and come back around. So there you go. That's my UFO story. Hope you enjoyed it. I've got a bunch of trucker stories. I mean, some really, everything from death on the highway to creepy people, ghosts, you name it. If you want to see more trucker stories, just leave me a comment. And by the way, I'm just curious. We don't really meet each other on YouTube very much, so I'm just curious. All we do is we see what video you make of your life. I'm just curious if, hey, leave me a comment. What do you do for a living? Have you done any kind of crazy jobs or anything? Let me know. I'm really curious. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll catch up with you next time.